My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era, and today I have Meena Kothandaraman. I hope I nailed that. Is an experienced strategist at twig+fish, and she's also a lecturer at Bentley University for, she told me just before this, 25 years. So it's a big year for her. So thanks for jumping on the podcast, Meena.
Thanks for having me here, Erin. I appreciate it.
Well, let's start at the beginning. For me, I'm a relatively new parent. I have a parent of twin 4.5-year-olds. For
Oh,
me, I'm always fascinated by kind of childhood and early formative years and how that impacts kind of where you are today. So maybe talk about that to start.
absolutely. So I have to tell you, every time I look back, because I do a lot of reflecting, every time I look back, my start has been very, very different. I'm definitely older, so obviously a different generation. But I grew up in Ottawa, born and brought up in Ottawa. But both my parents, interestingly, originally Tamil, both of them. However, my dad grew up in Kerala, my mom grew up in Rajasthan, so have very different backgrounds themselves. So the way we were brought up, I think, and it's a good question because in the generation that I was, I think two types of people came from India, which is they're going to come and they're going to shed everything they know about their culture, or they're going to hold on to everything that they know about their culture and embrace it as much as possible and inculcate it, if that's a fair word, to their children, to their families. And my parents really essentially were the latter, where they were so deeply ingrained in their own culture and really truly loved their own culture. I mean, if I have to truly say that, they didn't do it just because it was gratuitous. They really believed in so much about their culture, the value of knowing the language, the value of knowing how to cook the food, the value of knowing how to share it with the community. So our house was essentially the community center of Ottawa. So if you know anybody who has gone through Ottawa in the 70s, they will have come through our house at some point in time. So it's quite special to have grown up in a house like that. But how that sort of impacted my life is I grew up in a very Indian centric house. Um, I'm very fluent in the languages because my parents came from different parts and both had Tamil as their sort of shared language, if that's fair to say. We learned that too, reading and writing. And then for them, it was also the music. A big part of my growing up was music. My mother is a very, very accomplished sitarist. And my dad always wanted to learn Carnatic music and he couldn't. So he made that his sort of goal for us and us being myself and my two siblings to learn Carnatic music. But going to India every summer, which was again an anomaly, we were first of its kind in Canada to go every summer for 14 years in a row to go and learn music in India, and my mother would take us. So it's a very different upbringing, if that's fair to say.
Just an observation, I guess for me, I've noticed whenever I speak to Indian Tamils, and I'm just curious, I guess if it's maybe just like subconscious, but I've always noticed with uh, Tamils that are of Indian origin versus like Sri Lankan, it's interesting because you always refer to yourself maybe as Indian, like Indian first, versus I feel like with Sri Lankan Tamils, maybe it's a whole politic thing, I'm not sure, but it's always
Oh,
Tamil, like you always refer to yourself as Tamil. Not a lot of them say Sri Lankan. Like they never, like I never hear people say, "Hey, I'm Sri Lankan." It's I'm Tamil. I happen to come from Sri Lanka. Versus with Indian Tamils, it's oh yeah, I'm Indian. So I don't know if that's like something you noticed or it's like the first time somebody's brought it up, but I'm just curious about that as well if you have any insight.
that's a brilliant observation because my brother-in-law is actually Sri Lankan Tamil. So,
Uh,
that's a really brilliant observation. I don't think I've ever noticed it. I don't think I pay attention to it because my parents were sort of from all over. So if somebody says where's home in India, I'd say it's either Jaipur or it's Kottayam or it's Trivandrum or it's Chennai because I spent a lot of time in Chennai. Like I can tell you some, so I don't feel like it's associated with one region, if that's fair to say. But you're making me think about that. But I really
no.
appreciate you bringing that up.
No, I'm just curious. I think because I've had a few
Hmm.
talent guests from India and I've just noticed that and I pointed it out, but they didn't, they're like yourself, they didn't really notice. And I'm really trying to
Yeah.
get to solve that mystery, but maybe for another day. Yeah, so I
Definitely a
guess you
mystery worth solving, though. Yeah, sorry.
no, no, that's okay. Yeah, you mentioned you kind of grew up in Ottawa, and then obviously like the bulk of your maybe I guess academic, because I know you did school in Ottawa as well, but your academic plus professional life has been in the US. So, like, what made you decide to move from Canada to the US?
Absolutely. So Ottawa was all my basically my K through 12, if that's fair to say. And then also I went to undergraduate in the University of Ottawa. So uh, really started their work there was in the first gen of co-op at the University of Ottawa. So it was so much fun. Um, but I ended up moving to the United States because I was looking for a graduate program in this particular field. Canada didn't have it at the time. Actually, Canada is really only has started having it in the last 2 years. Um, so I made the choice to come to the United States. My brother had already come, so there was a bit of a pull because he and I are very close, and he was just like, "Oh, come, come, come." I didn't really see it as a big difference because we have a lot of family in the United States. So I decided, like, okay, sure. And I applied to different universities. At the time, Syracuse University was doing something where they had students come and they had, at the time, in this particular field, Xerox Park, which is the Palo Alto Research Center. Again, probably predating your times. But anyhow, they were sort of one of the big meccas for this type of work. And they had visiting professors from Xerox Park come to where I went to, Syracuse University. And I was instructed by so many of those people. So it was quite precious. It was really wonderful. So it was a big draw for me to be able to come to Syracuse and do my graduate work there.
Oh, interesting. And you mentioned like you and your brother are close. Like, I'm guessing you guys are the only like two children in the family.
We have three. I'm
Oh,
the
okay.
youngest.
Oh,
My
you're the
sister's
youngest.
first.
Okay,
She's the leader of the pack.
got it.
And then my brother, so my sister and brother are very, very close in age. And then somewhere along the way, I think my parents decided, okay, maybe we have a third, and there I came. So yeah. So I'm a little further along. But
What's the
but
age gap between you and your brother?
my brother and I are, math is generally not my forte, but he and I are he and I are 6 years apart. Yeah,
That's
my sister and I are about 7 years apart. So, but
that's so
yeah,
interesting. No, because I'm the oldest of four, but I
we're all
connect a lot with my youngest sister because like it's three boys and a girl, and she's 7 years apart, and then my wife and her brother, they're very close, and they're 7 years apart. So just something with that
oh,
magic six or
I
seven. Yeah, it's pretty
see.
interesting.
Yeah, I have great stories. I mean, both my siblings are just I have the highest regard for them. Brilliant people, are brilliant accomplishers and have accomplishments in their own right and have been real inspirations for me in terms of everything that they've done and the people that they are. So, but yeah, my brother and I are a crazy duo of some sorts, and I think we have a lot in common for sure.
What do you think your parents did in your childhood, or just kind of the way you guys were raised, that kind of created this very close sibling relationship?
My mom and my dad, I think his family was different. My dad came from a very, very tough background. He lost his mother when he was 13. He had a younger brother who he had to take care of, who was much younger than him. So my dad's upbringing it was wrought with a lot of challenge. He had a lot of family. My dad supported so much of his family back in India. So when he came to Canada, he was doing all of that already. My mom has always been very tight and had a really large family. So I think it was in their nature to keep family together, to really connect with family, to make sure that if we went someplace that we were keeping in touch. And we just sort of continue that throughout our lives. And I'm so grateful because my children, are on a group chat of like, 40 WhatsApp cousins on together, yapping about all sorts of things down to Formula One racing, all the way up to, the latest, Bollywood movie or whatever they're watching. So it's so wonderful that they have that connection and can really talk about anything. But families, without a doubt, has been huge, hugely important in our lives. So
Well, I want to kind of jump into obviously your professional side with, I think there's a lot of, I guess, questions that are kind of intertwined, but, one of the things I first noticed about your profile was, most people when they have a company, it's a co-founder or like some kind of typical role. You called yourself an experienced strategist. Obviously, that kind of jumps right out of the page. And then your company name, twig+fish. So a ton of questions here. Like number one is, how'd you come up with the name? Number two, why did you decide on kind of putting your role? I mean, I'm sure there's a pretty good reason, but the experienced strategist, like, is a very unique role that obviously catches someone like like me, like their eyes. So it's very attention grabbing. So
Certainly. So, do you know Tamil? Do you speak Tamil?
I do speak and understand Tamil, but I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say it's like 4.
Do you know what Meena? So Meena has a root name that is fish. So
Okay.
mean,
Mean, yes. Okay.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Right? So you'll know where the fish came from.
I see.
And the co-founder of my company is a lovely, lovely person named Zarla Ludin. She is also in Boston. And her heritage is part from the Afghan culture.
Okay.
And it was a metaphor. Her name, Zarlashta, is a metaphor for golden twig, which is supposed to be for blonde hair. And she is most definitely a brunette. So we sort of failed on that account as well. We always have a good laugh about that. But we decided, like, we went all around the world with naming the company and literally started to go, well, why not our names? And then she's like, what does your name mean? What does your name mean? And so we ended up with Fish and Twig because technically I was senior, but the acronym doesn't quite sit as well. So we went with Twig and Fish. And if anything, it's been a really fascinating discussion starter, just like it is now. Like, where did you get that name? So it's always been fun. And people often ask us if we're a pub because it does sound like an English pub, which I'm not averse to. So I will leave it at that. But experience strategist, reason why, to get more serious about that discussion, as you know, I'm a qualitative researcher. I'm in the field of user experience. For many of you who don't know this, maybe listeners might not know, user experience is actually a very, very well-defined field that helps design experiences that you consume on a daily basis for products, for services, for space. How many of you might have walked into a place and go, wow, like this just is not set up properly? Or how many of you have opened up an app on your phone and gone, I can't find anything. It just makes no sense. Or why have I delivered food and I don't know when it's coming? Or how come I'm ordering something on Uber and I don't really know what happened to the driver? Like you have certain expectations of that experience. But that experience is actually curated for you. It's designed for you. But how is it designed? Well, you have brilliant designers, but you also have researchers who observe you, observe your world, and how you insert yourself into that world. In the case of Uber, for example, you know, needing to get a ride from point A to point B, feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling confident. There's a whole bunch of things that start to tumble out when you start to talk to somebody about that. So this concept of user experience, or UX as it's called more colloquially, this concept and this discipline basically has come about and it's been around for a long time. But the experience strategist came because we're not purely researchers, but we're really looking to anchor the human story as a strategic tool in organizations. Because it's great to have a product and it's great to have a service, but if you cannot create that sense of relationship or you cannot connect to somebody's story, it's a real loss. And we see that time and time again where people have an experience that they go, I'm never doing this again, or I'm walking away from this because it was just so horrid. And sometimes there is ramification if it's a medical device, for example, it can be very serious. So you can imagine it runs the gamut of something that really doesn't matter to something that's life threatening. And there are UX people all along this spectrum that help design that. So when we started to do our work and when we started to work with our clients, they started to sort of smile and say, you're not really a researcher, you're a strategist. Oh, okay. So this becomes more challenging, but we started to call ourselves experienced strategists because truly that is the work we're doing, which is to help uncover that human story for organizations to come back to. Because when you hear a human story, even when you read the news, for example, Era, you're reading the news and you see that something affected somebody in a given way, you feel a sense of connection to that story. Why do you stay with that story? Why do you stick with that story? It's because you feel a sense of connection. And so stories are very powerful, and we use those stories to help people in the organization not only create their products and services, but to also inspire them to a new direction because you can't stay stale. But it's also to innovate, to disrupt. You can keep going forward. And that's where we sort of got called out and said, you're really experienced strategists. And that's how the term stuck.
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. Yeah, because you've been in the user experience world. Like, so I'm in the technology space as well, and I feel like UX and kind of this whole user experience focus or emphasis is, become more popular. It's in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe, but like more, definitely more recently. But you've been doing this for like
Mm.
20, 25 years, like this whole experience. And even though I'm in the technology world, I'm an engineer, all that stuff, I've always been a late adopter. And to your point about like Uber, for example, like obviously you're comparing the experience of Uber versus like taking a taxi. And I was such a doubter of like things like Uber. And then for the first time I used it, and it was like such a magical moment of, pick where I'm going, it knows where I already am, tells me
Yeah,
whatever's coming. I get in, I get out, everything's taken care of kind of in the background. It was a beautiful experience. So
yeah.
to your point, I guess like obviously that's why there's more of an emphasis on it, I would say, in the last few years. But uh, I guess that whole rant aside, I guess what made you kind of have that spark or that interest in being, wanting to kind of focus on user experience, like that particular part of the whole product design kind of cycle?
Absolutely. I was actually, as I mentioned, I was a co-op at undergraduate in my undergraduate at University of Ottawa. And this field, just so you know, predates back to the 60s and 70s. It was more openly known as human factors. It was the term that was sort of associated with it, very commonly for pilots in a cockpit. The way, if you've ever seen a cockpit and the number of switches that they're dealing with, it can be highly confusing. And it actually is a challenging moment sometimes when pilots are faced with certain situations and they notice that those designs needed to be improved. There was a lot of military discussion, as you can imagine, from military points of view as well. But this field has actually evolved over time. And UX as a concept itself really started to pick up speed from like client server days of 90s, which is really when I started. It started to really started called usability, then it became user experience. It sort of evolved and how it's been called. Um, but when we actually look at this field, what at least sparked it for me was in my undergraduate, again, dating myself here sadly, but in my undergraduate, I was a co op student at an organization in Ottawa. And there was one human factors expert, and she sort of took me under her wing. And she was doing work for then the Bell Canada payphone. And I love to say this because it's such a great design we came out with is the payphone is still there, still the same. But it was basically observing how do people use the payphone? What do they do? What are things that they need? Like it's better to have the number displayed to you instead of putting in the wrong number or, fingering the wrong number and accidentally calling the wrong number and then losing your quarter, right? Because of course those days you had to find yourself another quarter to make that call, which sort of sounds funny to say now. But these are things that we would observe, we would understand. So you're sort of looking at the contextual use of that product to see how you could improve it, how you could make it better. So I had the moment to do that as a co op student, which was, I can't even tell you how important and how big that was for me. But I kept in touch with that. I sort of kept up with that. And that's just what sparked the interest and kept it going all the way through grad school and all the way after as well.
For people kind of, again, people are in different stages of their career. Some are starting, some are more kind of, in the middle or tail end. Um, you always hear about the common kind of sentiment now, which is like follow your passion or things that get you excited. But there's also like the other side, which is just, once you become good at something, you also get excited about it and kind of stick through it. Like to get good at something, you got to typically stick with it for a while, but that takes enthusiasm, energy, and that's tied to kind of how, I guess, excited you are about that thing. But that's two things. Like one is this, I guess, natural curiosity, and the other is like when you're good at something. Like I wouldn't say that I love math, but I'm pretty good at math. So there's things associated with math that I enjoy just because I'm good at it. So I guess what would be your opinion on that particular statement or kind of, like what I just kind of said around follow your passion or follow what you're kind of good at from a career perspective?
I think it needs to be both, to be honest with you. I always, we used to have exercises when we were kids at school, and I don't know if they still do this in Canada, but sort of what are you naturally good at? What do you love doing? These were questions that we were asked as fifth graders, as sixth graders. I remember very clearly my mom was kind enough she was amazing at saving every report card and everything that I'd filled out. But these questions were asked of us because it is important to reflect on what your capabilities are, but to find those things that come to you naturally, to find those things that you're really good at, to find those things that you love doing. So why not find something that you love doing that you're really good at? Find that overlap. There will be a field out there. And this is something I tell my students, I've told my children, I've told their friends. Um, Find it because it'll be out there. Unfortunately, I think this is a very possibly controversial statement. The education system has to change. I mean, there's just too much of it that's too siloed still. There's too much that's very, like, you're very limited in the way you think about things. And that's not the way jobs are nowadays. I can be somebody who is business minded and has a real, love for biology or the sciences and find something that actually merges those two together. So I would say going with both to answer your question. I think I was really positioned to think this way. I think because of my upbringing, because I was used to this balancing of my life at home and my life outside of home, being Canadian, being Indian, bringing those two together constantly, sort of, figuring out where that equilibrium was, so to speak. So I think it became really easy for me to do this and see things from other people's perspectives because I was always, even as a kid, I was like, okay, well, we do this at home. Like, why aren't those people doing this? Like, why isn't this person doing this? Or why am I doing something and why are they not doing that? Like, there was always that sort of calibration that was going on. So I think in some ways it came to me naturally. And I just find people's stories really interesting. And there's no end to it. So you never are stopping learning. You're always going to learn from somebody. You're going to always learn from somebody because they have some lived reality that you don't have, which made this field even more interesting to me. So I think to answer your question, though, it's both. I don't feel like people need to choose. I don't feel the need to say either or. I think it's and.
Well, makes sense. Um, and with respect to kind of, we talked about um, the twig and fish, but you also concurrently are also a lecturer and teacher, and the way you speak is very evident that you are a teacher or like a instructor of some sort. Like you can kind of explain things that are complex and distill it down to easy to understand kind of concepts. But how do you balance being a lecturer? Like, do you view yourself as a lecturer first that happens to run a company or like as an entrepreneur, or do you view yourself as an entrepreneur first that happens to also be a lecturer? And like, how do you balance the two? Yeah.
No, fair question. I am definitely an entrepreneur first, and a lecturer second. And it's funny, I know my title is lecturer because that's what they sort of slap on you when you're a lecturer. But I don't see myself as a lecturer. I go into class and I love telling people, like, I have experience and so do you. And we're just going to share experiences. Like, I've just been around this sort of gone around the globe a few times with the sun and everything. I've done that a little bit more. That's it. So I definitely have a little bit more experience, but that doesn't mean I have more experience. Like, your experience might be varied in a very different way or in a part of some vertical or some domain that I am completely unaware of. And that is what makes the class so precious. So I think personally the two live beautifully together because, especially in this field, uh, the kind of field where you are looking backwards and reflecting, and this is very in the moment. This is now. This is we're looking at. Every year my course is changing considerably. There's a framework to the course, but the outer pinnings of the course is constantly changing. As you can imagine, discussions about AI now are just flooding in. It's very common for us to have those discussions, but how do you inject it into this field? At what point do you inject it in? Where can you inject it in so that it is meaningful and there's governance and there's discussion around responsibility of data, all that stuff, because you are dealing with human data and you do have that ethical approach and responsibility toward that data. So when I bring that all together, I need to have that very in the moment knowledge to be able to share with the classroom. But then I also have people in the classroom who are working the field as well. So they are bringing in that knowledge. Sometimes it's a great discussion. Sometimes it's a disagreement. That's even better because then it's not just them learning, it's me learning, but it's also learning. And even if I'm saying the same message, I've said the same message, if it's a topic on I'm just seeing personas, or I'm seeing on research frameworks. Yes, it could be the same message, but the fact that you have different people in front of you forces you to sort of craft the way you share that message. And that's what I love because it challenges me to say, okay, well, you know what? I just shared this with Aaron. He's thinking of this completely differently. Therefore, I need to maybe pivot and use some different words here. It challenges me so that when I go back to the next client, I'm sort of ready for it. And I've already got a few in my head that I can pivot on because I've also had the classroom. So they sort of are, they live beautifully together. There is a very symbiotic relationship. And I love that because I can take both back and forth. And the students also love the real world experience. It's not as if I'm just opening a book and going to chapter five. Not that that's a bad thing, but in this case, you really do need something that's relevant and that's very current. It does make a difference.
Do you feel like the being a lecturer gives you credibility when getting approached or approaching clients for twig and fish and vice versa? Like you said, like I think of sports, like where if you've never played a sport but then you're coaching it, there's you have, I think, perceived less credibility versus you're teaching people something that you actively are doing not just for somebody else, but like a business where you regularly are kind of evolving kind of what you're doing based on client needs. So do you find the credibility piece is very, I don't want to use the word useful, but that's like the best word I have for now for both the client facing side of things with Twig and Fish, but also with respect to, students taking what you are saying seriously because you're actually putting it out there in the world.
Yes, the simple answer is yes. When I'm at Twig and Fish, and I have been around the block in this field enough for people to know my name. So when they see my name, they do recognize that they know my sort of street cred, if that's fair to say. So they do see it, they know it, and they're aware of it. So they will know, especially the program. I started with the program when it was just at its inception. So I've helped build the program. The program has consistently been in the top three in the world for a very long time. The founder of the program is a brilliant gentleman who just retired this past year, and so he has worked tirelessly to create, this program and this infrastructure for people to really learn all the details of user experience in a very, very organized, very structured way. So when people hear that I'm associated with the program, there's that. When people know that I'm the predominant researcher who's been teaching in that program, especially the qualitative research course, I'm very thankful to the alumni who've gone out and done wonderful things, but they've gone through my course so that they reference my course, or they'll be like, oh, this is something that I learned at Bentley, and who was your teacher? Oh, it was Meena. Oh, great. And then that comes back to me. So that helps me as a consultant for sure. But also when I'm in the classroom, uh, if somebody is like even this, I just literally submitted my grades this past week. I had somebody who is in the aeronautical industry ask some really tough questions about some difficult stakeholders that they're dealing with. And it's like, I don't know if you've had this problem. I'm like, oh, plenty, line them up on a regular basis. But here's ways that I deal with it. I'm actually in the middle of a study right now that's really challenging. We're not able to find with the military. We're trying to find people. It's very challenging to get their time. I'm in that moment right now. He's listening, all ears in. It gives all the more credibility to what it is that I'm doing. So it helps on both sides. And it really does help. I speak at conferences regularly, so that ups the street cred. It sort of all works together, but I do love it because I end up learning a ton. And it really keeps me curious as well because students come from our program at Bentley is so vast and so different and so diverse. We have people from all over different countries in the world. And that's what also makes it truly interesting. Because as you can imagine, that story and that human story is vastly different because cultures are different and how people, manage these things are very different. So it's all really fascinating to me.
Tell us about the NCredible Framework in 60 seconds. I'm guessing it's something that's very unique to Twig and Fish, or maybe it's yourself personally. But love to kind of in 60 seconds, to someone that's a beginner like myself, like how would you explain it? Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you. if it's possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Be happy to. So when I think of the Incredible Framework, it's a shared canvas basically that is communicating. It's sort of like a communication tool between researchers and stakeholders. I think of stakeholders almost as non-researchers, but stakeholders who really have a question or even a learning objective that they're trying to unpack. Because a stakeholder has questions that they want to answer. That is really their goal for even coming to the research team. Um, and their intent really needs to be unpacked. And a lot of times, that moment of discussion between stakeholders and researchers sort of goes missing. It just sort of is assumed, it's sort of unspoken, it's sent over an email. This particular framework that we put together really allows the researcher to expose what is needed for high integrity, high credibility answers. And it really exposes the effort that is needed to get to that moment. The benefit for the stakeholder is that they hear about the effort, and that effort often is understanding why a particular question needs a particular context or a particular sample. Why is it that we have to use this particular method that seems to be very heavy handed versus something that could be very quick? Why not AI? Common question nowadays. So, this particular framework starts to unpack all of those details, and it allows us to remain very open and very transparent so that the stakeholder truly understands how their question is being unpacked, how that learning objective is ultimately going to be answered. And it really then gets them to put emphasis where they need to and prioritize where they need to. So that's the essence of this framework, um, because ultimately it will tell you the proper service that research needs to provide in a given moment. And that is an exercise that we take our stakeholders through. I don't
Wow.
know if that was 60 seconds. That might have been a bit longer, but
No, got it. Okay. So, we talked quite a bit about kind of your professional experience, and this might be tied to it as well. But I'm curious about, beyond Twig and Fish and being a lecturer. I think you also mentioned, or there's mention of you, I think, writing a children's book and also hosting a cooking show. So you kind of are, you have this kind of creative juice in different areas. So I'd love to kind of hear about both of those endeavors and kind of what made you do those things. Actually, even like with Twig and Fish, was that because you were a lecturer first, and then I think Twig and Fish was like it's coming up to 10 years. What made you start that company? And then obviously like going into these other two things that I mentioned as well.
sure. So if I start with that last question, so I've been independent as a sort of I'm not employed fully by a company, so to speak, for 25 years of my entire existence. And I started Twig and Fish 10 years ago just because Zarla was interested. We both decided we put our minds together. But up until then, I was sort of working solo. It also helped me because I didn't go back to working full time in a company because I will say, as a woman of color, I kept on hearing that it was not possible to, and in that generation, be somebody, well up in a company and also have a family and take care of that. It just wasn't possible to do both. Again, having grown up in a household where both seemed to always be possible, I wasn't really willing to accept that. My partner has always been so, so supportive. He was like, you know what, you can do it, but you don't need to work for a company. Just go do it on your own. And I wasn't sure. I kept on wanting to dip my toe in, and he was just like, just go for it. And it was one of the best things he could have ever done to support me because I did it and I never had to look back. I was there at everything for my children as they grew up because they're now both, functioning adults. But as they were growing up at every, whatever tennis practice or whatever choir rehearsal or, function or some sort of concert that they were in. I was at everything. So I got to really enjoy that, but I also got to make the most of the work that I was doing. So being able to do that was really precious. Um, I'm so sorry. The first question, I think I lost track of. Just
Oh,
remind me
no,
what the first
the
question
first question was really around the children's book that you wrote and the
was.
cooking show and the cooking show you host.
It's a bit of that curiosity. I mean, so again, coming from my house, cooking is such a big thing. I've cooked with my mom, cooked with my dad, both my parents, phenomenal cooks, have fed more people in Ottawa than I can possibly keep a count of. Sadly, both my parents have just passed, and even at even at the page that people were writing about, people would comment on their food and how whenever I came to that house, magically there was always food for me, and not just food, but delicious food, an array of delicious food. And you know what that means in our culture. It's just such a big, big part of inviting people in. And my parents didn't just do that with people of our origin, but it was people in their neighborhood. Our closest neighbors felt comfortable coming over at 9 o'clock at night and saying, "I'd like a cup of chai. Like, would you make that for me in there, please?" And she'd be like, "Of course, so and so, sit down. We'll have we'll have a cup of tea together." And she would always have something or something that she would share with them, and it's just beautiful. So that sort of has always been part of my existence of having food around. Twig+fish, even whenever we have local clients we can meet with at the end of our studies, we always love to invite them home and I cook them a dinner. It's our thing. We love doing that because it's just so
Mm.
much fun. But the cooking show came about because, again, for my kids, it was just something that I was doing in between. I thought, oh, this would be so much fun. I've always wanted to do this. And I'm sort of one of these people who I think I'm literally like, I don't want to misuse the term ADD, but I literally do have my head goes in 10 different directions. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this. And somebody was like, do it, do it, do it. And then I got an opening to do it. And then it worked and it went really well. But then I thought, okay, this is great talking in front of a camera. It's a lot of work. But I wanted to move that forward to work with kids who I had the chance to, was really fortunate to do it for a few seasons. And it was at a time actually before plant-based stuff even became a thing. I seem to have cut onto things or gotten onto things that became a thing only after the fact. So clearly math is not my thing. I told you that in the beginning. So anyhow, I ended up doing this show and it was so much fun, but I wanted to do a little bit more to do with kids getting involved because, if you look at inner city schools, some of these kids don't have access to some of the ingredients I was mentioning. So what I did was we started to pivot and we started to have kids involved and get them to just tell me what ingredients they had in their fridge. And then we talk about that and we'd make something healthy based on the ingredients that they had in their fridge. So we sort of, again, it's back to what I do for my profession. You listen to your customer, you really try to actually cater to their needs. So we sort of morphed it. And then I just took a little pause from it because it became a bit much with my kids and their activities and trying to manage everything at the same time. And with the children's book, I've actually sadly written 10 children's book, which is I'm just bad because I've only published one. It was another thing that I just wanted to do. And I've always wanted to publish a children's book. And my kids, when I was naming them, it was just interesting the conversations you have with people. They're like, oh, well, don't pick don't pick an Indian name. It's too hard to pronounce. And I'm thinking to myself, I love our Indian names. They're gorgeous. Like, why would I not want to give and that's my choice. I'm not gonna ever judge someone who doesn't do that. But my choice is I want to give them a beautiful name, but there's so many beautiful names that are easy to pronounce too. So I was really thoughtful about that. And I talked to my husband, and he and I, shortlisted our names. But then I wanted my kids to have something to go to that made them give them some pride in their name, and also not feel bad to correct people if somebody says their name wrong, because we make this grand assumption that people cannot say our names. If you just actually give them a cue, it'll work. They actually will correct it and be like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to mispronounce your name." People are very good and kind, and I truly believe in that. Um, I go to Iceland. I've been to Iceland several times, and it was the first time I saw like big words that I couldn't pronounce, and I felt the moment that people had when they look at our last names and go, oh, "I don't know what to do," and you just freeze. So it was a good moment where you look at these things and you want to just give a simple story about, can you say my name and I can help you pronounce it? And then I realized I sort of kept the blinders on thinking about our culture. I can tell you how many other people in other cultures were like, I bought that for my kid. It was so great. I just wanted them to feel like they could say their name. Um, it's just a simple story. And it was good. And I was glad I could do it. I was really, really happy I could do it. So,
Oh, that's amazing. I guess it also sounds like a few of these things, or these two particular things you did as a kind of a way to, it was kind of connected to your kids, so it was kind of a way to kind of connect with them, but also do something fun and creative for yourself as well, for the reasons you mentioned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm an adventurer. I love trying. I always called my mom, had my mom been born in this generation, she would have been a serial entrepreneur. Like
Yeah.
she has come up with more ideas than I can give that woman credit for. It's unbelievable. But I must have some of that in me because I'm constantly thinking of different things. Like maybe we could try this. And then my friends are always like, and if you ever want to quit this profession, you've got just one more lined up for you. So we always have that joke going. So yeah.
I guess a couple of reflective questions for you. So one is, if you had a chance to speak to 16-year-old Meena, what would you tell her?
16-year-old Meena. I tell 16-year-old Meena. I think what I would tell 16-year-old Meena is I think I was always a little different. Like I always looked at the world a little differently. And if I would tell 16-year-old Meena, I would just say wear it on your sleeve. Just work it. It's not always about making other people happy in the moment. Sometimes it's also about if you know you're not doing anything to hurt anybody or harm anybody, do you have a thought of something that you want to do? Just go for it. Like be adventurous. Because I think I always had that in me, but I think for some reason it was also just figuring out between cultures, like where those guardrails exist, if you want to call them guardrails at all. But just sort of knowing, like, is this permissible? Is this not? Like, can I do this? Should I not? Going whole hog. Like, I wish I had, if I could tell myself at 16, I would just go whole hog, I would do it again that way. And I can't say I have regrets because I think I started doing it pretty quickly by the time I was 20. But sure, I would take 4 more years of that. I would give it to myself if I could.
Yeah, and I guess like looking forward, if you had, I guess for your personal legacy, how do you want to be remembered by your friends and family?
I was smiling. I'm smiling when you say that because I've been asked that question before.
Okay.
I think to even be remembered is a real honor nowadays. I don't know. Do we talk about people as much? Do we talk about the people who impacted us? How do we emote? People emote so differently. So I think just even if somebody did remember me, I would be really, really honored. I think if I had to be remembered, though, my legacy, I think it's more about the person that I am. So I think I'd want to know that I was depended on. I was, somebody that if somebody was in a pinch and they needed something, they know that they could call me to get it done, and they know it would get done unequivocally. Um, Somebody that's unwavering, somebody that's sincere, very direct, very honest, hopefully kind, and kind of crazy.
Great.
I think that's what I would say.
Well, that's a good segue into kind of the last part of the podcast. So it's a fun game I like to call Creator Confessions. It's a speed round where I'm going to say a bunch of statements and you'll quickly tell me, I guess, what pops to mind for you. Ready?
Okay.
Favorite Tamil food?
Oh, that is not fair. It's too much. Dose.
If there's a fire or flood and you have time to take only two things with you, they can't be people or pets. Like what would those two things be?
My listening device for music. So no people or pets. My listening device for music and my pictures of my family or my videos of my family.
Something that scares you
Oh, there's only one thing that scares me is assault.
and insecurity that you have.
God, insecurities that I have. Era, you're asking me a tough question. I've never been asked this question before.
I've
What
been
is
told
insecure?
I've been told this is part fun, part therapy. This answer.
Oh my goodness, what is an insecurity that I have? Oh, okay, no, no. All right, there's one. Sorry, I had to think about this for a second. I don't know if this is an insecurity, so tell me if I'm not answering this question properly. Is I worry about people being left out. I get very bothered about it. So I'm constantly like, if I'm organizing something and somebody's left out, or somebody might be like sad because they were not included, like
I think
that
that could be
concept of
included.
sorry, I know that might be on the outer fringe of insecurity, but it's something that plagues me. I'm really trying to work at it, but
Sure.
that would be the closest that I have to it. That is something that has stuck with me forever. Like I have this thing about people being left out. So therefore I will move mountains in order to make sure people are not left out.
Love that.
I don't
Favorite.
know if that's sorry.
I think it's still a good answer. I think it was on the fringe of what I was asking, but I think it's probably a better kind of answer, so I like it. I guess your favorite show that you're watching.
Can I give a genre
Sure.
or do I have to give you a show?
Show would be
Oh,
nice, but genre is fine as well.
that I'm watching right now, or that
Or
I've
you
watched
watched
in the
recently?
last year?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say Ted Lasso.
Oh, that's where we just finished season two, and yeah, such a great
Oh,
show. Such a great show.
I think we need more of that in the world right now. I'm
Yes.
just gonna remind you that I'm in the United States. Pray
Yes.
for me. Just
Yeah,
pray
no,
for me. So I'm just gonna say Ted Lasso because I think it's all the good that we need right now.
such a great show. Um, Money can be hard to come by, but here is a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free? A place you're itching to travel to.
Greenland and Botswana. Can I give you two?
Yes, I'm
There
getting
you
on
go.
this too. I love travel, so it's good.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. Greenland and Botswana, two places because I've traveled a ton. I need to go to Greenland and I need to go to Botswana.
the thing I remember about Greenland and Iceland is Greenland is full of ice, and Iceland is more relatively green compared to Greenland.
I know, but Greenland just, I'm Canadian to the core. I need cold temperatures.
Yes,
Anything that starts to go over 10 C, I'm out of there.
that's funny. Usually people like to get out of the cold, but
No, no, no.
a, a fellow Tamil creator you're itching, or sorry, a fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to.
Well, creator, I would give a shout out to. I'm gonna do my nephew. I'm gonna do my nephew because he's in Toronto. So hopefully people in Toronto listening to this will hear this because he's doing some cool stuff. His name is Parameshwaran, and he's doing some cool stuff with a fun matrimonial program, Tamil matrimonial program. That's
Oh,
really fun,
and
like a
what's
dating program.
what's his name?
Amaresh,
Oh, Wish.
Amaresh.
Okay, cool. Um, and what's a favorite childhood memory of yours?
A favorite childhood memory of mine is going to India to learn music, but the best part of it was actually sometimes the food. It was being on the train. We would take the train from Delhi to Trivandrum sometimes. So at some point in my life, I'm going to have to, one more thing to add is I'm going to have to write a book because our life going to India, people don't do that anymore. Like that's just not the way people who live in the North America actually exist in India when they go. But we literally would take the train, like whatever it was, 3 nights, 4 days, or 2 nights, 3 days, whatever it was. We would meet the most interesting people along the way. We have shared food with people. My mom would break out a jar of Skippy's peanut butter, and somebody would have a whole dabba full of thin, rotis with fantastic, uraga and stuff. And we would be eyeing that, and they would be eyeing our Skippy peanut butter, and we would make the swap. Some of the best moments were over food.
Amazing. You got to read that book when you write it. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, this is not a fair question. What genre, what language? Oh, movie of all time. Oh my God, I don't even know where to start answering that question.
I think you have an answer your gut's already given you. You got to go with that.
Okay, I'm going to give you Princess Bride,
Princess Bride. I
one
have
of my
not,
favorites.
I've not,
Don't tell me you
I've
haven't
not watched.
seen it.
No, I have not. I
Okay, it's total comedy, it's total silliness.
Princess Bride. Okay, I'll take a
It
look.
is, it's just fantastic. You'll just laugh because it's ridiculous, but it's fantastic.
I'm on like the totally opposite side. I think the movies I would have picked are like much darker. It's like American History X and I think
Oh.
the Gladiator, the original Gladiator.
Oh, see that Gladiator movie? I watched it and I was just like, do you remember what I said about assault? Yeah,
Uh,
I don't do well. I think I get all like I literally my husband always laughs because I'll watch half of it. If he puts movies like that on, I literally have a blanket up and he's like, and what is the purpose of us
yeah,
choosing?
for sure. I agree. Um, what is a decision that you've been putting off for a while?
I want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, but I've not been able to because I just got off of a third foot surgery. So I'm going to, but I have had to put it off.
Hmm.
But I'm going to do it.
What's something that you were wrong about?
Uh, what's something that I'm wrong about? Um, I consider myself a nice person. I don't forgive easily.
Hmm.
And that's something I was wrong about. I always thought like, oh no, no, you're very forgiving. No, no. I'm actually really rotten about that. So I'm trying to do better.
Um, What's a purchase you've made that you splurged on recently in the last few years that you have no regret about?
Oh, that I have no regret about. So how interesting. Oh, see, and I don't splurge. Now you're giving me ideas to go shopping. I'm not a splurger. I'm actually a really mindful shopper. What have I splurged on?
And the splurge is like a relative term, you know? One person, what
One
you do.
person splurge, yeah. Okay. It's not a splurge. It was actually a really good deal. But we signed this is crazy. I can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast. We signed a lease for two cars on the same day.
Oh, wow. That's a kind of a splurge. There you go.
It was a splurge, but we got such a great deal. We were just
Yeah.
like, let's do it. And we did it before all the taxes came on board. So
Oh, that's smart.
we traded our old cars in because we were doing so much driving and we had old cars that had no connectivity or anything. We were like, we need to upgrade. And we got a great deal on two cars. So my husband's like, let's do it. I'm like, let's do it. And then we just left and we were like, what in God's name did we
Do you
just
guys get
do?
the same car?
We got almost the same cars. They're
Okay.
nothing great, but it's nothing like it's not like we're talking like Land Rover or anything, but they're both fantastic cars and we were very happy with them. But it was a bit of a splurge.
That's a good answer. Pet peeve.
Disrespect, bad attitude, uh, just just things that you learn in preschool when people forget it.
Person that a person, it could be a celebrity or just anybody, whose life you'd want to experience for just one day.
Jane Goodall.
Who's that?
She is the chimpanzee legend who is just she's just an amazing, amazing woman who has is just a celebrity in her own right and is just one of the most humble people and has done so much work to advancing knowledge on humans and also on chimpanzees and our relationship with them and our evolution and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And if I ever had the chance to even meet her or understand her life for even a day and just understand her mind, it would be such an honor.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
These are very good questions. I'm so sorry, I'm taking a while here.
No, that means you're putting thought behind them.
I mean, I love questions like this. But to be very honest with you and being very truthful, I try to live my life with no regrets. I think my only regret is if I literally died tomorrow, the only thing that sort of makes me nervous is a few things that I'd want to make sure that my kids had access to. Like, have I put my passwords in a place that they can access? Like, really logistical things. I have no regrets about spending time with my family, my kids, like in touch with everybody. Like I really try to keep things calibrated. So it's more the logistics. Ugh, that's the part I would regret.
Hmm. A book you've read or a podcast you've listened to that's had an impact on you.
Modern Love
I don't know. Okay.
in the New York Times. I
Okay.
just loved it. It was just, again, in a time when things are really wonky and there's just so much negative news, it's just different ways of looking at the concept of love and human existence.
Hmm.
I do a lot. I think a lot of the podcasts and stuff that I listen to are always about human story or human existence or perspectives on life. There's a really fascinating organization, and tell me if I'm going off the beaten path here, but there's a really fascinating organization called the Human Library Organization. And I think it's either based in Denmark or the Netherlands. I
Oh,
can't
you
remember
can
where.
take out people and talk to them instead of books. I saw that
And
podcast.
I did that and I just loved it. I just loved it. I love moments where you can just see something from somebody else's point of view and just take a box and turn it on its side and have a moment where you went, I never thought about it in this many, because my work is about describing the variety in a given space. That's what I do for my job. If something, if you're cleaning, if you're using a robotic vacuum cleaner, describe how people talk about cleaning. There's a variety in how people talk about cleaning. I need to describe it to you in more ways than just saying 5 out of 7 people said that they like cleaning.
For
It's
sure.
not enough, right?
Yeah.
So I love looking and listening and learning about the variety in a space. And I love the way modern novel is done.
Hmm. Uh, and then finally, actually, no, two more questions. So, a belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life.
A belief, behavior, or habit. I just, I love one thing that one of my closest uncles always did when I was growing up. Again, family is so big. I have had some of the best role models just within my own family. My mother's younger siblings, my father's younger siblings, and my dad's younger brother has this beautiful way of calling people on their birthday, even if it's just your one day of the year that you can keep in touch with that person, or texting them in today's world, because sometimes that's a better way to keep in touch. But just reaching out to somebody on their birthday and just saying happy birthday and just remembering that. I do that with some people once a year only. And the fact that I do that once a year, they're just like, oh, and I was waiting for my birthday wish from you. Like, thank you so much, because I knew you were going to reach out. Like, you haven't let me down. And somehow that's just a really nice way to keep in touch.
I love that. And finally, a piece of advice that you would want to give to your aspiring fellow Tamil creators out there.
We have such a rich heritage. Sometimes I don't feel like we need to have any other group of people tell us that it's valid or tell us that it's real. There's so much of our own culture, there's so much of our own existence, the way people live, the way people eat, what they eat. Don't look for affirmation from somebody else. If you believe in something, go for it. Just go for it, because there will be somebody out there who will listen to it, or it's just part of your learning that you will fine tune that message. You may not get it perfect the first time. I can definitely attest to that. I don't think of the word failure as a fair word in the language. I don't think it's about failure. I think it's about learning, because you are going to screw up a few times and that's going to happen, but it's that you're learning. If you don't learn from it, then yes, it's a failure. That's what I would say. Um, but to my fellow creators, I would say, please share your successes with other people, and especially younger people who just don't know, because sometimes, depending on what kind of home existence they have, they don't have the permission to think big and bold. And they just need to hear or see somebody that looks like them or thinks like them or sort of has a similar background like them to know that the possibility exists. And that is enough to be inspiring to them.
Great message to leave the listeners with. So, Meena, I want to thank you for kind of jumping on, sharing your, very interesting story and way of thinking. For someone listening that's, like you said, the exact message you said, that has been inspired by what you've said today and they want to connect and kind of, chat further. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Absolutely. They're welcome to, if it's like, professionally, I would say if you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you're welcome to do that. I would just ask, just drop me a note and say that you heard me on this podcast, so I just know where the reference is coming from. Um, if not, I don't think via Instagram you can drop a message to introduce yourself, but I think probably that would be the best way, or just hit me up on email, at amina@twigandfish.com.
Perfect. Well, Meena, thank you again for making time. And for those of you listening, as always, I appreciate you guys doing that. And on to the next episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.